You ever wonder why some guys, who aren't even that good looking, who don't have money, status, or a six-pack, still have women chasing them? They walk into a room, and something about them shifts the energy. Eyes follow them. Conversations pause. And women, yes, even the ones who claim they don't chase, suddenly start competing for their attention. It's not luck. It's not magic. And it's definitely not something you're either born with or not. What these men know, what they've mastered, is an understanding of something so primal, so deeply embedded in female psychology, that once you tap into it, everything changes. You no longer have to pursue, you attract. You draw her in like gravity, without begging, without pleasing, without even trying to impress. And here's the truth. Most men have been lied to. Society tells you to be nice, be safe, be available. Show her how much you care. And yes, while kindness and empathy are valuable traits, they're not the triggers that light a fire of attraction in a woman. They don't make her fantasize about you. They don't keep her up at night wondering why you haven't texted her back. What makes her chase is something else entirely. And it starts with the energy you bring, not what you say, not what you wear, but how you show up. Neil Strauss called this inner game. And let me tell you something, it's not just a buzzword from the game, it's the foundation. The inner game is the difference between a man who needs women and a man who chooses women. One repels, the other magnetizes. When you walk into a room with a sense of groundedness, like you're not seeking approval, like your world is already complete, you flip the switch in her brain that says, "Who is that guy? Why isn't he looking at me like the others? What does he know that I don't?" That's step one, being centered in your own presence. And I know that sounds vague, but let me break it down. Imagine this. Two guys walk into a bar. One walks in, scanning the room, adjusting his shirt, looking around to see who's watching. He spots a girl he likes and immediately walks toward her, already rehearsing what he'll say. He wants to seem confident, but his nervous energy betrays him. Now the second guy walks in, and he's different. He's calm. His eyes aren't darting. He walks slowly. He's not there to prove anything. He orders a drink, chats with the bartender. Doesn't even glance at the women at first. He's in no rush. He's enjoying himself, fully present, fully in his body. That guy is the one women notice. Why? Because he isn't trying. Because he's not playing by their rules. Because his energy says, "I'm the prize here." That's not arrogance. That's self-ownership. That's magnetic. And it's exactly what David Dita in The Way of the Superior Man calls the masculine core. A man who is anchored in purpose, not swayed by fleeting emotions or the need to please. But here's the part most guys miss. When you operate from this space, when your energy is calm, playful, and non-needy, you trigger one of the most powerful dynamics in female psychology, the need to qualify herself to you. That's right, instead of you proving your worth to her, she starts trying to prove hers to you. And this is where the game flips. See, women are used to being pursued, complimented, chased. They're used to men trying to win them over. So when a man comes along who doesn't do that, who's grounded, playful, a little unpredictable, her mind doesn't know how to process it. So what happens? She starts chasing. She starts investing. And that, my friend, is where the real seduction begins. Let's take it deeper. There's a psychological principle called investment bias. It basically means the more someone invests in you, the more they value you. This applies to money, time, emotions, you name it. And when a woman starts to invest, when she starts asking you questions, touching you, laughing at your jokes, leaning in, it's not just flirtation, it's psychology, it's wiring. But this only happens when she senses that you're not chasing her validation. Let me give you a real-world example. I was coaching a guy, we'll call him Alex. Great guy, good career, decent looking, but he kept ending up in the same pattern. He meets a woman, things go great for a few days, and then she loses interest, disappears, ghosts him. Every single time. So I watched how he interacted. And immediately I saw the issue. He was giving away all the power, constantly complimenting her, texting her multiple times a day, rearranging his schedule to be available. And the worst part? He was doing it before she had earned any of it. I told him this: "You're offering the cake before she even wants dessert." He laughed, but he got it. So I had him flip the script. No more chasing, no more explaining himself. I told him to live his life, to text only when he genuinely had something to say, To stop trying to impress and instead start observing her, making her qualify. It took 1 week. 1 week before the dynamic changed. She started double texting him, calling, asking when they could see each other. Why? Because she felt the shift. She felt the lack of neediness. And that made her feel a very unfamiliar emotion. Desire. Women desire what they can't predict, what they can't fully have, what keeps them on their toes. And this is something every seductive man understands. You don't give her everything up front. You don't pour your soul out on the first date. You create tension. You create mystery. And not by pretending or playing games, but by being a man who doesn't give access without intention, a man who protects his energy, who values himself more than he values the approval of any woman, no matter how attractive she is. And when you live from that space, she chases. She texts first. She opens up. She invests. And she starts to wonder why you're different from the others. That's when attraction turns into obsession. There's a strange paradox in human attraction, especially in women, that most men never grasp. The more predictable you are, the less emotional tension you create. And without emotional tension, there's no intrigue, no suspense, no spark. That's why so many nice guys, despite being respectful, generous, and attentive, are forgotten. They're too easy to figure out. They operate on a straight line: attention, compliments, validation. It's safe, it's sweet, but it's emotionally flat. Now compare that with the guy who is warm one moment and distant the next, not in a toxic way, not as a manipulator, but as a man who isn't trying to control the outcome. A man who's simply living in alignment with his own energy. He's focused on his mission. He's not emotionally available 24/7. He knows that a woman's attraction grows in the gaps between connection. And this, my friend, is one of the most powerful truths in seduction. Attraction grows in space. If you're always there, always texting, always responding within seconds, you don't give her space to wonder. You don't give her space to miss you, to fantasize, to feel anything other than certainty. And certainty is the enemy of seduction. Now, this doesn't mean you disappear. It doesn't mean you play games. It means you build emotional contrast. You're present and attentive when you're with her. You connect deeply, you listen, you hold eye contact, you lead. You bring the masculine energy she craves. But then, you let go. You disappear into your mission, your hobbies, your workouts, your friends. And in that silence, she feels something most men never give her: the delicious uncertainty of craving. Because here's what most men never realize: women are emotional creatures. Not just in a cliché way, but neurologically, biologically. Their brains are wired to respond to emotional variety. Not just comfort, but surprise. Not just closeness, but distance. Not just sweetness, but challenge. That's why the push-pull dynamic, used properly, is a seduction superweapon. Mystery plus presence, magnetism. And the best part? You don't need to try to be mysterious. You just need to stop over-explaining, stop oversharing, stop needing her to understand every move you make. One of the most seductive things a man can do is to be okay with being misunderstood. When a woman says, "You're hard to read," and smiles when she says it, that's your signal. You're doing it right. You're giving her just enough to stay connected, but never so much that she can completely figure you out. This is how desire is maintained over time. Let me take this even further. There's a concept in evolutionary psychology called mate value discrepancy. In simple terms, it's about how people perceive their own value compared to yours in a mating context. When she sees you as slightly above her in terms of confidence, options, ambition, emotional control, she chases. She adapts. She tries to close that gap. But if she senses that you see her as the prize, and you behave accordingly, her perception of your value drops. Now, this doesn't mean you act superior. It means you carry yourself like a man who has options. Like a man who doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. Like a man who's already chosen himself. And that is intoxicating. Because it's rare. Because most guys are trying so hard to be liked that they abandon their own masculine frame in the process. But a man who stays rooted in who he is, who can flirt without outcome dependence, who can walk away without resentment, that man is unforgettable. Here's a practical way to build this dynamic starting today. Next time you're on a date, or even just chatting with a woman, resist the urge to fill the silence. Let the pause breathe. Let her wonder what you're thinking. Hold eye contact for half a second longer than usual. Then smile, not to seek approval, but because you know something she doesn't. This creates what I call the silent tension loop. It's subtle, it's powerful, and it puts her in a state of heightened awareness around you. Her senses activate, her thoughts spiral, her emotions fluctuate. And that's exactly what keeps her engaged. Now let's talk about emotional dominance, not dominance in the controlling or aggressive sense. I'm talking about the ability to remain centered while everyone else is reacting. If she tests you, because she will, it's not because she's trying to be cruel. It's because she wants to feel that you can hold the frame, that you're not going to crack under pressure, that her emotional chaos doesn't unseat your internal calm. Every time she throws a little jab, a tease, a moment of drama, she's subconsciously asking you, "Can you handle me?" And when you can, when you smile, stay grounded, and even tease her back playfully, she feels something she rarely feels around men: safety and unpredictability. That's when you become the man she not only wants to sleep with, but the one she thinks about long after the night ends. Because unlike the rest, you're not reacting to her. You're responding from a place of grounded masculine energy, and that's what separates the men she flirts with from the man she chases. There's something most men completely overlook when it comes to seduction. It's not just about how she sees you, it's about how she sees herself when she's around you. Let that sink in. You see, a woman doesn't just fall for a man because of who he is. She falls for how he makes her feel about herself. And the deeper the emotional experience you awaken in her, the stronger the imprint you leave behind. Think about it. There's a reason she obsesses over that one guy who made her feel alive, seen, electric, even if they never hooked up, even if he didn't chase her. It's because he created an emotional mirror. He made her feel like a more powerful version of herself, more feminine, more playful, more desired. And that, right there, is a secret weapon most guys never tap into. When you understand this, when you stop trying to impress and start amplifying her experience of herself, you don't just attract her, you become addictive. Let me show you how. Start with how you make her feel in your presence. Is she relaxed? Is she laughing from her belly, not just politely? Is she feeling free to be expressive, a little wild, a little raw? Or is she walking on eggshells trying to say the right thing? Because here's the truth, when you are completely yourself, unapologetically, it gives her permission to be herself too. And when that happens, attraction shifts to connection. And connection? That's where seduction becomes unforgettable. You don't need to talk about deep emotional topics to create this. It can happen in the way you hold her gaze without flinching, in how you tease her about something, and then immediately soften it with a smile that says, "I see you." It happens when you notice a tiny detail, the way she twirls her hair when she's nervous, or the way her voice shifts when she gets excited, and you name it. Not to impress, not to score points, but to show presence. And presence is one of the rarest forms of seduction in today's distracted world. Now let's flip it. There's another concept that works like fire when used properly: projection anchoring. Here's how it works. Every woman has a fantasy, not always a sexual one, sometimes emotional, romantic, rebellious, or even spiritual. It's often buried beneath years of social programming, shame, rules. But it's there. And when she meets a man who subtly represents that fantasy, without saying it out loud, she starts projecting it onto him. She starts thinking, maybe he's the one who finally understands me. Maybe he's the one I can lose control with. Maybe he's different. That's when she starts to chase. Not you as a person, but the story you allow her to live out through you. This is why men who trigger fantasies are irresistible. Not because they're perfect, but because they tap into an unconscious narrative that excites her. Now, how do you do this? You don't fake it. You embody it. You don't talk about being dangerous. You carry a subtle edge in your tone. You don't say you're spiritual. You speak with depth and stillness. You don't brag about being ambitious. You move with focus and self-discipline. In short, you become the reflection of the story she secretly wants to be part of. This is why it's so powerful when you live your life with direction. When you walk a path that most men are too afraid to walk, one of self-discipline, mystery, and emotional sovereignty. That kind of man can walk into a room and say almost nothing, and still become the emotional focal point of every woman there. Because he doesn't ask for attention. He commands it, silently. Now let's take this even deeper. There's a layer of feminine psychology that responds specifically to risk, but not in the way you think. It's not about being a bad boy or reckless. It's about emotional risk. A woman wants to feel that, with you, she's crossing a threshold. That talking to you, laughing with you, even thinking about you, is somehow dangerous to her sense of control. That's what makes it exciting. And you create that dynamic not by being chaotic, but by being unavailable in predictable ways. For example, you're fully present when you're with her, but you don't chase after. You respond with warmth, but you don't overshare. You escalate tension, but you never rush the payoff. This builds a psychological loop inside her. She starts wondering what you're doing. She thinks about you at random times. She compares other guys to you, and they always fall short. Why? Because they're too accessible, too explainable, too flat. Meanwhile, you've become a mystery with a heartbeat. That's powerful, that's addictive. And you didn't do it by changing who you are, you just started subtracting the noise, the neediness, the constant explaining, the approval seeking. You became a man who speaks less but says more with every look, who doesn't explain his value, he demonstrates it in silence, who doesn't push for connection. He creates a gravity around himself. And once she feels that gravity, she'll orbit around you without even realizing why. Let's now talk about something that changes the game completely: emotional contrast. Most men are emotionally one-dimensional. They either act cold and aloof, or they're overly nice, available and agreeable. But true seduction lives in contrast. You want to trigger desire? Make her feel two things at once: tension and comfort, playfulness and dominance, warmth and unpredictability. That's when her emotional brain lights up, because contrast equals stimulation. And stimulation is the fuel of feminine attraction. This is why a moment of teasing followed by deep presence hits so much harder than just being either a clown or a monk. She needs to feel safe and intrigued. She needs to feel your masculine strength and your attuned awareness. And most importantly, she needs to feel like being with you is an emotional adventure, not a script she's seen 100 times. Now here's how this plays out practically. Let's say you're on a date. She says something cheeky. Instead of laughing nervously or ignoring it, you lean in, lock eyes, and say, "Careful. You keep talking like that, and you're going to end up liking me more than you planned." Boom. You've just pulled her into a flirtatious game. But what makes it powerful isn't the line. It's your energy behind it. Calm, grounded, a little challenging, a little dangerous, but safe enough that she knows she won't get hurt, unless she falls for you too hard. This is emotional contrast in action. Now let's take it deeper. There's a technique known in NLP and high-level seduction psychology called future pacing. It's used in sales, hypnosis, and relationships. And when used right, it makes you unforgettable. Here's how it works. You speak to her as if she's already emotionally involved with you, without ever saying it directly. You might say something like, "I have this feeling that if we ever travel together, you'd be the one getting us into trouble." Simple, playful. But what's really happening? You're planting an image of the two of you together in the future. You're anchoring a fantasy. And when women begin to imagine you in their future, even in small ways, they begin to feel bonded, even if it's just in their subconscious. You can do this with travel, music, teasing predictions, playful stories. The key is to spark her imagination, to let her feel something unfolding, even if nothing's happened yet. That anticipation is powerful. Now let's flip to another underused element of seduction: controlled vulnerability, not weakness, not dumping your life story. Controlled vulnerability is when you reveal small parts of your depth in unexpected moments. It might be a short pause when you talk about something real, or the way your tone softens for half a second when describing a challenge you overcame. It could even be the way you laugh at yourself without losing your dignity. These small moments give you depth, texture, humanity. Because here's the truth: seduction without emotional depth is a performance. And performance fades. But when you create tension and allow her to glimpse your real self underneath, she becomes invested in the story of you. She starts to feel that being with you isn't just exciting, it's meaningful. That there's a world behind your eyes that she wants to explore. And when she feels that, she stops entertaining other options. Because now it's not about attraction, it's about emotional engagement. She doesn't just want your body, she wants your mind, your attention, your approval. This is the silent power of the man who doesn't need to chase. He makes her chase connection. Now, let's add a final layer to this part. State transference. State transference is a principle taught in high-performance psychology, and it's gold when applied to seduction. Here's what it means. Whatever emotional state you're in, she will begin to feel too. So if you're anxious, she'll feel anxious. If you're bored, she'll feel disconnected. But if you're grounded, playful, curious, relaxed, that becomes the emotional tone of the entire interaction. This is why being in control of your internal state is the most powerful seduction tool you'll ever have. Before you go on a date or approach a woman, you don't need pickup lines. You need to manage your inner world. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. Access a state of calm curiosity. And carry that with you like an unshakable presence. She will feel it. She won't be able to describe it, but she'll feel drawn to you. Because in a world of chaotic energy, your stillness becomes magnetic. You become the eye of the storm. The man who doesn't react, but responds. The man whose silence says more than another man's words. The man she can't categorize. And once she feels that difference, once she tastes the emotional contrast, the imagination, the subtle power, you'll become the question in her mind that keeps her up at night. And she'll chase that feeling again and again and again